This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Alongside my good friend Pierre Noujaim, recently engaged like 3 weeks ago, so the wedding should be planned by now, Pierre.
Yeah,
you got everything locked and loaded?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we do have a date.
Okay.
Actually, we do have a date, but everything after that is just a matter of why are we spending this money on this and not on a house instead? That's going to be the rest of the planning.
Yeah, you're going to find yourself saying things like, "How much do you think that a cheeseburger costs?"
Yeah,
like to the vendor. You're like, "How much?" Like, if you and I were to go and get a cheeseburger, and I would buy you one. Like, we're going to go sit down, even at the nicest place that you can think of, and get a cheeseburger. How much do you think it costs?
Right.
And then you're going to get, well, that's different. No. I want to the price point of what you think a cheeseburger costs. And at most, it's like $12. And that's if you get like a really fancy cheeseburger.
I was going to even go up to 16, tops. Yeah,
16 tops. And you're not serving Wagyu beef cheeseburgers at your wedding. You probably aren't serving cheeseburgers, but I had this debate about sliders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, about sliders. I was like, a slider is not a whole sandwich. You know that, right? Like,
right.
It's a roll and part of the meat. For the other rest of the sandwich, you eat like 2 to 4 of them, and it's like eating a whole sandwich. And the cool part about it is if you have a chicken one and a burger one and like maybe one that's different, or a different kind of burger or a different kind of chicken. One's buffalo, one's barbecue. You mix and match, and you have, it's like having 3 sandwiches at once, but you're really only having one sandwich. That's the magic of it.
Yeah, and as you know, typically at an average wedding, you have a meat or fish option. Some people decide to go the vegan route or just the vegetarian route, and that's fine. I have a feeling no matter the meat or no matter the fish, I think I'm going to find myself at some point saying to the caterers, unless you have video evidence of the chef slaughtering this cow himself with his bare hands or deep sea diving and plucking the fish out with his bare hands, you explain to me this price point then. Explain it to me.
Yeah. Yes. I think that you are justified in that. And believe me, you'll know. And the one debate I kept having with the lady who, when we were going to have the wedding in Nashville, the lady at the venue, the one debate I kept having with her was like, okay, well, I've decided that I'm going to pay for the bar, that's going to come out of my end of this wedding.
Right.
And so I said, listen, let's pretend that my friends are all Motley Crue in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what I need to know. Now I know that they're not, but I need to know Motley Crue 1986, between teetotalers and Motley Crue is where I'd like to do this.
Sure.
And she kept giving me a sliding scale. And I'm like, no. I don't need a sliding scale. I need, let's just say that I cloned Tommy Lee and Vince Neil and Nikki Sixx over and over and over again. And the only way to sustain them was to just live their life from 1986 over and over and over again. She didn't get it.
That was actually my first question to our wedding coordinator. I said, just especially when it came to the bar, because I know both sides of the party here. I said, this is a runaway train and there is no stopping it. Just give me the end result. Because I just want to know now because I guarantee you, even if you set a cap of where we would expect to be or where they think it should be, we're going to plow right through that. I promise you, with the people that are coming to this wedding. So
here's what I would suggest, and then we'll get to sports where everybody's here for. You do open bar, but you time it out, and then you shift down to selected things like a couple of different, like a groom bride cocktail, a beer and wine, and then and that make that cash bar for like a a flat rate kind of.
I think that's going to be well within consideration.
Yeah,
yes.
I think that's what you do because if you do 2 hours of that and then 2 hours of the other, believe me, the first 2 hours will take care of the second 2 hours. Nobody will.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's what it'll be. I'm still fresh in it. I remember all these things. So
this is why I'm going to be leaning on you heavily over this next year.
You and I are very similar personality wise.
Oh yeah.
Like we share views on a lot of things. Like there's not a lot of you and I debate on certain things, but it's not like we are of like mind on many, many things.
That is very true.
Yeah. So it's why we've gotten along so well for all these years. So
famously, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pierre, you were not with us last week because you had at the last minute to go cover the Lynx and the Liberty and the WNBA finals, which is now past game 3. Ridiculous near half court shot last night. Were you there?
I was not in attendance, but I was watching at home.
Yeah. So that was Sabrina. I'd ask you. Just wanted to mention that it was a crazy shot.
Unreal. I dropped. I had my fiance sitting right now. We were both watching the game. I said, "Oh my God, you've got to be kidding me!"
Yeah,
the unbelievable shot.
Yeah, to win the game. I mean, that's Usually that's before halftime. You shoot something like that, not at the end.
Right.
And she still had a little bit of time. She could have gotten a little bit closer, but if you don't need it to, I guess you just shoot it from wherever.
Just channeled her inner Damian Lillard, and that was that. Yeah. She called game, and that was it.
Yeah. We're going to have later on in the show, we're going to have some random NFL chatter because you and I have not talked NFL yet this year. And, we like to change it up from time to time. But we got to rewind 2 weeks because I was very much looking forward to having you on last week before you had to go cover the Lynx. But you were at one of the biggest upsets of the season. And maybe, I don't want to say it's Minnesota's biggest win of all time, but I would say it's probably up in their top, I know they won some national championships back in the dark ages, but as far as in recent history at Gopher Stadium, I can't imagine a bigger win that's happened there.
The only other game that I can think of in terms of at Gopher Stadium and in the PJ Fleck era would be, and I don't even know if this even feels to be a little bit even of a stretch talking about this game in particular, because if memory serves me right, Minnesota was ranked during this game, but it was the Penn State game. Late in the season, Penn State comes here, a little bit of snow on the ground, and Minnesota goes and wins that game. I think Penn State was ranked in the top 10 at that time, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say they were ranked 9th. But Minnesota was ranked in the lower 20s. But they get a big win against Penn State. But in terms of, on paper talent and in terms of ranking and everything of that nature, this is arguably the biggest win of the PJ Fleck era. I don't think I thought Minnesota could cover the 8.5 point spread. I thought they were capable of covering, but I certainly did not have them winning that game at all. And they put together a complete team performance. And that's kind of what they've been talking about the entire season. They said, we had a great first half against Iowa, crap the bed in the second half. We had a really bad first half at Michigan. We outplayed Michigan by a wide margin in the second half of that game. We just haven't put a full 60 together, and they were able to do it that game. And that was the result, and good for them. They almost let down the week after, though, Paul, at UCLA. I mean, they were staring down the barrel of it at UCLA, but they were able to pull it out.
It does appear to, because it appears to have buoyed their spirits in a way that maybe something like in the last 2 seasons, nothing's been able to do.
Yeah. I would agree with that entirely. And, this is, we've kind of talked about this with this team, like in terms of the fan base and my frustration with them, especially with the new look Big Ten. You kind of have to be at peace with the fact that this team, the most you might be able to get out of this program is 8-4 seasons. You go to a decent bowl game and you're just going to have to live with it. If you get to 9 wins, if you somehow get to 10 wins in a season, that would be amazing. But in terms of playing with the big boys in this conference, a la Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, USC, those type of names. Well, we've seen now, even though they didn't win the game at Michigan, we've seen that this team has been able to hang. They've been able to hang, and they've held their own. They were able to get the win against USC. So I think there's a lot to be happy about in terms of that win and where they're at right now after 7 games.
Yeah. And they're probably kicking themselves for that North Carolina game earlier this year.
Oh, absolutely.
Because things have turned around since then. Yeah.
Before the season even started, we looked at that. When I'm looking at the schedule, and everybody does the same thing that I do. Win, loss, where you go down the schedule, you're like, oh, this is probably a win. This is probably a loss. and the people that I talked to, we pointed at that North Carolina game. How often do you point to a season opener and think to yourself, if they win or lose this game, this could be the determining factor of whether or not they go bowling this season? And that's how we felt about the North Carolina game. They lost that game, but now they put themselves in a position to still go bowling at some point, which I think would be an accomplishment for this team, given the schedule that they were dealt at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, 2-3 down the stretch puts them in a bowl game. So yeah, right. And that's an improvement from a year ago. That's what you want. And I think 3-2 is very, very doable with the schedule.
Especially starting, they've got 2 games off the top of my head, which I think that can be had with Maryland and Rutgers, even though Rutgers is having a very good season. But I think those are the 2 games I'm looking at right now, thinking to myself, well, those are the 2 games that are right there for you. And you better, and Wisconsin is not looking so great themselves either. Wisconsin's absolutely a winnable game for them at the end of the year. So
yeah, they've been better the last 2 weeks, but but again, we'll see who they are when they play Penn State in 2 weeks. So
right, yeah, amen to that.
In a week, actually, next week. So that's where they are. But that brings me to the topic I did want to talk to you about, which is the overall shakeup in the Big Ten that happened last week because of Oregon beating Ohio State. Now, does it change Ohio State's playoff destiny? Not in the slightest at all. Like, they would have to have an absolute collapse. But it does, I thought that Ohio State, of all the teams in the Big Ten, was the one who was the most unlikely to get got. Like, no matter where they were, because they're so deep, especially on defense. But, man, Oregon went out there and beat them and did what they had to do. And they don't look as invincible, although it's still going to be really tough. But maybe, there's a little bit more parity in the league than we maybe admitted at first.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I remember when you and I talked about before the entire college football season even started, you asked me, who do I like and who do I like a lot? And I said Oregon. And after the first 2 weeks of the season, I was like, oh, man, I may have overestimated Oregon here in this capacity, but they've bounced back nicely from the first couple of games that they've had, and they've absolutely looked like the national title contender that I thought that they would be at the beginning of the season. Like you said, this loss does nothing for Ohio State in terms of probably how their outlook is going to be. It's very likely that this is going to be their only loss of the season. So, in terms of what I would like to see from Ohio State, I guess Will Howard can execute a late game drive a little bit better. I would, you would think that he would be able to do that, but, credit to Oregon and the way they played defensively in this game. But in terms of how things are shaping out in the Big Ten, well, USC hasn't done themselves any favors in the last couple of weeks. Ohio State, like we said, it's going to be there. And Oregon right now has put themselves in the driver's seat. So, I don't know how much, I'm with you on this. Like we said, we see eye to eye on so many things. I'm not really batting much of an eyelash at Ohio State at this point. So this is why, Paul, I don't like change. I don't want to get away from the 14 playoff because these losses, I mean, even in this, if it was still only 4 teams, I would have to imagine that a loss like this for Ohio State, if it was their only loss at the end of the season, probably still wouldn't be enough to push them out. Yeah. But even in a 12 team, if this is their only loss, they're going to be a top 4 seed. No problem.
Yeah. No, I'm all like, that's where we do disagree. Like I love this change. I'm glad there's a 12-team playoff. Like there's still going to be beauty metrics that are completely arbitrary for the committee and directives that they have, even though they won't say that they have those directives. You'll never get me. I am the furthest thing from a conspiracy theorist in the world. You know that. But I will absolutely tell you that Greg Sankey, basically told them at the beginning, there's no way that we're having the playoff without an SEC team in it last year.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way.
Oh, yeah.
That's not going to happen. And nobody was like, yeah, but, maybe you guys didn't earn it one time. Everybody else has not earned it. Like, why can't you guys? It's like, well, it just means more. And okay, that's a slogan.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the slogan. But yeah, I'll never not believe it as long as I live. And that little decision since that day has been nothing but tragic news for FSU.
Yeah.
Like nothing.
Yes.
Nothing. It's been such bad news. The way that the administration reacted to it, I don't know. I don't want to go down my rabbit hole. I don't. Because then, like, I'm going to sound like a flat Earth truther. I'm just not. By the way, you're going to love this, Pierre. I think it was last Thursday when you weren't on that this happened, where we were talking about conspiracy theories, and I said the problem, like with the, like the moon landing, it's something like over 15,000 people would have to keep the same secret. And one of the people in the chat room goes, well, that's terrible logic. Like there's absolutely 15,000 people could keep a secret. I'm like, no. Especially without that one that big, especially if you had evidence about it.
15 people can't keep the same secret. I do think 15,000 are going to keep the same secret. I mean, the way I did want to say that, with the way you were talking about Florida State, it just reminded me of, our good friend George Costanza, who once said, it's all just slipping away and you're all just letting it happen. That's how I feel about your state of being with Florida State at this current point in time.
Yeah. With Greg, I can tell you, I'm very Costanza in many, many things in my life. Here's what I felt like when I was watching Greg Sankey last year. I'm like, he's bebopping and scatting and I'm losing it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I thought was that right there.
Oh, yeah.
Bebopping and scatting and I'm losing it.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Then afterwards, I turned into Frank Costanza Serenity. No.
Yeah. Yep. Insanity later. Yeah.
Hey,
that's
Mr. Fetterman, you want to buy a computer? Why not? that was how it was. But look, now I've made peace with it. Yeah. I actually have channeled, and it's made me feel better in a weird way, that there are people who have it worse. And last week, I saw a video that you posted a couple weeks ago. You posted that Larry Beal did. And I know that Larry from the Bay Area, and he was there.
Bay Area broadcasting legend, Larry Beal.
Yeah, he was at SportsCenter for a while, and now he's been in the Bay Area for a long time.
Correct.
And he just eviscerated John Fisher.
Yes.
Eviscerated him.
Yes.
And I said, well, you know what? The A's fans, don't know, do you even like the team anymore? That's the thing. The Raiders fans, it was a little bit different because they'd been through it before.
Right.
And that's much more of a a cultish thing in a way. They're almost like A&M fans where once you're in, you're in. You dive all the way in.
Yeah.
But with the A's, it's just the fans were just caught so flat-footed by everything, I think, about how it worked, that I think there's a lot of them that are like, well, this is my favorite baseball team now.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely how I feel. I mean, I am now, and here's insult to injury of where I'm at too, because as of right now, I still don't even know if it's fully going to happen, but it looks like it's on pace for it to happen. As of right now, the Oakland A's are going to be playing in Sacramento for the next 3 years, which is my hometown. Mm-hmm. Some people on the outside might be thinking, oh, you're an A's fan, they're going to be playing in Sacramento. That's great. No, this is not how this works. And again, as you pointed out, I'm disgusted that my hometown would serve as a pawn in this whole thing to facilitate a move to Las Vegas. I'm disgusted, considering the fact that they almost lost the Sacramento Kings to Seattle. So they know all about this. But in terms of the fans, I think I probably even told you, I don't think the fans are completely blameless in this whole situation either. However, it is well out of their control when it's all said and done. But yeah, that I wish we could dig up that piece of video from Larry. He just absolutely just destroyed John Fisher, and every ounce of criticism that comes John Fisher's way is 100% warranted and deserved. 100%.
I often battle with who are the worst owner, who are really the worst owners in sports, right? Who are they? And it's to the people would tell me Jerry Jones is one of the worst. No, he's great at owning. He's terrible at general managing.
Correct.
Owning, great.
Correct.
General managing, bad. There's a difference. John Fisher is bad at all of it. I mean, he's all the owner. He's bad at owning, marketing, everything an owner's supposed to do. Where Larry Dolan from the Knicks, who I think is a terrible owner, will still sometimes fall ass backwards into things.
Correct.
Like he has currently.
Yes.
Like it's not because of his acumen that Jalen Brunson is there and now people want to be there. Like that's has nothing to do with him.
No.
It just has everything to do with and I kind of feel like that's maybe how he got rich, was he just kind of fell ass backwards into money.
And that'll happen. I mean, that happens.
And look, I'm not knocking it.
No.
I would love to fall ass backwards into money.
Oh,
I think all of us would love to fall ass backwards into money.
You just tell me when. It's like a trust fall. You just tell me when to fall back, and I'll do it.
Yeah. No, I would love it. I mean, I'm not knocking hard work and all of that, but I'm just saying that if you've somehow found a way to, don't knock it.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. No, absolutely. In terms of
hawk to a girl right there, ass backwards into money. Live it up, girl. Live it up.
That's the beauty of this country, Paul. At any point, anytime, anywhere, you could be a self-made millionaire at any point, and you wouldn't have to do much of anything other than just be yourself. How about that? What a country.
Yeah. Little Yakov Smirnoff there, huh? Is that where you went back? All the way back to the 80s?
All the way.
I think he plays Branson on a regular basis still.
Underrated decade, by the way. It takes a lot of heat for the fashion, but the 80s brought us a lot.
Oh, I take the 80s in a heartbeat over the 2020s.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, hey, amen to that.
I'd give up my iPhone in a heartbeat.
Yes.
In a heartbeat for that. Did we have another window incident?
Oh, no.
Oh, a wreck outside.
We have a wreck.
Okay.
Oh, no.
T-bone action.
Here's the
You know
deal.
what's funny? I saw it in your glasses, Paul. I saw the reflection of what was going on outside, and I saw it come across in your glasses.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a break because I'm going to go out there and take a look. Garrett, play a couple of spots here if you can, just so we have a minute to figure out in case we need to go help somebody. Pierre will be. This is the triple option.
Fantasy Sports EVO, the next evolution of daily fantasy sports. Tired of traditional fantasy sports where you spend hours upon hours studying individual players? EVO's unique team-based platform makes it easier than ever for all sports fans to play. No need to know individual players. Just choose your contest, select your teams, and enjoy the game. Whether you access our website from a desktop, mobile device, or the app, the experience is the same. EVO is for all sports fans. Join Fantasy Sports EVO and experience the evolution.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina, Pierre Noujaim, and it appears that, other than it was a head-on collision.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it did happen at the light here, so I don't think either side was going all too fast. We had, this is probably 6 months into us being in this building. There was a really bad accident at the thing, so I was concerned that was happening again.
Oh, no.
So I wanted to make sure, because we had to actually go out and help with that one, because it was at a time of day where there wasn't a whole lot of traffic, and we had to call 911 and all that. So wanted to make sure, but it looks like there was already a sheriff there, a constable actually. So that was a nice stroke of luck, but it appears everybody's relatively okay. So
okay, well that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear it.
So, but really kind of scary out there. But Emery just hopped up, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" So, it's that was nuts. So, Pierre, let's continue talking a little bit about the Big Ten and where we see it. I want to go back to Will Howard for a second. Will Howard, if you go back to the game that he had against Texas, when he was at Kansas State a year ago, kind of wilted down the stretch, right? He wilted down the stretch. Now, if we go back to, other times where he had some big games, but this was a moment where he did. He wilted down the stretch a little bit. I'm not trying to put it all on Will Howard, but I wonder, because he's been playing so well at Syracuse, and they did change the offense. That's why they brought in initially Bill O'Brien, and then he took the BC job, and then it's Chip Kelly. Well, if Kyle McCord was still there running the Chip Kelly offense, do we think that Kyle McCord would have won that game?
Yeah,
he lost one game as the starter at Ohio State, and that was to the eventual national champion Michigan.
Yeah. That I think that's a very fair question. And in the world of NIL and transfer portal that we live in now, I know that we get to play this game, time and again now, year after year. But I think it's a fair question to ask. I think Will Howard has all the ability in the world, but sometimes you have to question of what's in between the ears, I think, a little bit with him. And not to say that he's not, fully capable or anything like that, but when the pressure rises, you want to see, especially, I get it. It's the hardest position in sports. I totally get it. You want to see your quarterback rise to the occasion. And he almost did it, but, almost is only, as only good in horseshoes and hand grenades. So I think that I think Will Howard will be fine in the long run. I'm in my head, I'm joking to myself, is Curtis Rourke going to take Indiana? Is this team just crazy enough to do this thing? I personally, I don't see it happening, especially given some of the games that are still on their schedule. But Indiana's been a fun story, haven't they? Goodness gracious.
Yeah, no, we were going to get to that. Indiana, I don't know how for real they are, but they certainly look like they are, right? Like they keep winning games, and I don't know if they're going to, be in the playoff, but they're going to take a chunk out of somebody's playoff hopes, I think, or at least make them nervous.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think in turn when it comes to the Big Ten, I still think that despite the loss to Illinois, and Illinois is a great team. Illinois is playing very well this season, and this is no shade or no knock to Illinois. But I still, when I watch Nebraska, even though it's not perfect, and Matt Rule probably as well as anybody out there, when I watch them play, there's something about Nebraska that I'm like, if they could just get to just tweak a couple of things, I still think this team has a real shot at making some serious noise. I have a lot of faith in Nebraska. There's something about Nebraska that I just like. I know it wasn't pretty against Rutgers, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. I'm kind of caught in between with Nebraska of, okay, yeah, it didn't look pretty against Rutgers, but at the same time, too, that defense still held them within 7. I mean, are we going to nitpick about whether you win by 7 or whether you win by 27? I don't want to get into that kind of argument with people about it, but I don't know. I still like Nebraska to do some things by the end of the year.
Yeah, I do too. I think that they can build up some momentum. I think that they've got I'm trying to think. They've got Ohio State left, and that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But they've got a real shot at being 9-3 or 10-2. If they're 10-2 in the Big Ten, there's a good shot they are in the playoff. Now they're not ranked currently, so they need beating Ohio State would put them into that conversation. Let's not put the cart before the horse. They've got to beat Indiana this weekend, which I think is low key the second best game of the week after Texas and Georgia.
Absolutely. Texas and Georgia, I'm absolutely going to be watching, but you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Nebraska and Indiana, especially with the way Nebraska has been over the last decade, I know that, nationally, there might not be a lot of luster on this game, but if people pay close attention to what's going on at both of those programs right now, this is even though, like you said, even though Nebraska is not ranked, it has all the feelings of a top 25 matchup and a game that has major implications the rest of the way for both of these teams. If they have a realistic chance of getting into a playoff or being a party crasher by the end of the year, this game has so much at stake for both of these teams, and for one, I can't wait to watch it.
No, I think it's gonna be an excellent game. I think that you've got kind of a little bit of contrasting styles, and Curt Cignetti and Matt Rule are kind of cut from the same cloth of like they are the football coach's football coach. I promise you that. And Curt Cignetti's doing some things at Indiana that look, the Purdue fans are panicked about it because they what did Jack call them? 9-win Indiana is tough for Purdue fans to deal with. And
yes.
They have had a very long drought of, I would say, overall athletic success in the Big Two. Men's basketball is as important to them as it is to anybody anywhere on planet Earth. It's as important at Indiana as it is at Kansas,
yes.
at Kentucky, at Duke.
Yes.
But they are not in that conversation anymore and have not been for a very long time. So that pains them. Then when you're like, okay, well, at least maybe football can be kind of good. And they had Michael Penix for a little bit, and he kept getting hurt. Then he goes to Washington and becomes a first-round pick. And now they actually maybe have some hope in that athletic department. Best of luck to them. I would be lying if I said I wasn't, rooting for Nebraska and Smokey and Matt Rule and all the people, Sean Patton and all the people we know on that staff. Right. I really want them to do well. I especially want them to do well. And another very Seinfeld and Larry David way for spite to the Carolina Panthers.
Sure.
So, you fired a coach who might have wound up being pretty good if you just let him go for a little bit. But because you have problems, you just did that. So I'm absolutely can't wait to be butt on couch for that game on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think one thing with Indiana too, I think it's fair to put them in this category. It a lot of times when you and I discuss our favorite teams and sports teams and people who root for their various teams, if you're not going to be good, at least be entertaining in your losses. Even though Indiana hasn't lost a game yet, Indiana kind of has that feel to them because they could put up points in a hurry. Like they've got that fun style of offense that they like to play. And I think Indiana falls in that category for people who haven't watched Indiana play. They are absolutely, in my opinion, that team of if they were 2-4 instead of 6-0, I still think I would still call them an entertaining team with the way they play football. So if you haven't watched Indiana play, this absolutely is going to be the game to see. I think it's a measuring stick game. Even though Nebraska is the dog here in this game, Paul, like I am looking, I like to pay attention to these things. And when I saw the line where it is for Indiana, I was almost like, let me get in the car and make a drive down to Iowa because there's a nice, crisp $100 bill sitting in my pocket with Nebraska's name on it right now in terms of the points. So, yeah. Is
that the closest state for you?
To get to where I need to get to in order to operate my business. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes. I think I technically could go to Wisconsin, but Iowa's a shorter drive.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's not, what is it, 2 hours?
Well, actually, Wisconsin, I could cross the border to Wisconsin in less than an hour, but then you have to get to places and stuff. So
it's kind of the wilderness on the border.
Yeah, I think you have to be in person in Wisconsin. I don't think you can do it on your phone. Iowa, you can do it on your phone.
I one day will just take the time to go through all 50 states in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
in terms of rate, yeah.
Where do you think Texas is going to come in almost next to last? Even though,
absolutely.
Mark Cuban sold the majority of his interest in the Mavericks to the Edelmans, and they're trying to get it here. So we'll see, how many, pockets they can grease. But
look, I have a legitimate question. I would have to imagine that everyone in the gambling and casino business in the states of Oklahoma and Louisiana.
Oh, stop right there. No, that's the biggest problem. The second biggest problem is there's people who just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
The biggest problem is the fact that Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico,
yes,
all have it.
Yes.
And listen, and for that fact, so does Mexico.
Yeah.
So who actual Mexico?
Yes.
Well, I guess New Mexico was at one point old
Sure.
regular Mexico.
Yeah.
But Mexico, all like everywhere that borders Texas. I'm not even sure if Arkansas has it yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not sure actually.
But again, I like you can, but Arkansas, like same thing. Right there in the Arklatex corner up there, you can just go to Shreveport and do whatever you want.
Right.
Right there. So I don't know if they're pushing as hard, but Texas is a gigantic state.
Yes.
And there's lots of places you could put casinos. But look at you, and I know you've been there. I know you've been to WinStar. I often joke that the city that WinStar is in should be called Barely, Oklahoma, because it's like 2 miles in. Like you are 2 miles across the state line. It's barely Oklahoma, barely. And so they don't want to lose. Like they don't want to lose that if they can help it. Now, granted, I think that's going to be a futile enterprise eventually because someone will get something done here, and I don't know how much it'll really affect them anyway.
I think you're right. I think it's only a matter of time. It might take longer in Texas, but I have to, like I was saying, I have to imagine everybody in the casino business in Oklahoma and Louisiana, it has all the feelings of essentially the Cold War. They will tooth and nail. They will do everything they possibly can to obstruct or red tape any kind of law or notion that gambling could be legalized in the state of Texas, because they know if they do, the business that they will lose. Because if you drive, the joke was, from what I heard, even though I've never been there, I've driven through there, but the joke is that the casinos in Lake Charles, they're all Texas license plates. And when you go from Houston to Lake Charles in what, 2 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all Texas license plates out there in Lake Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're gonna lose that, but it's and that's why I'm sure the lobbyists are going like, no. And the thing is that what they do is they give money to the anti-gambling groups.
Correct.
Like they give it to them, so that it's not them. So like the anti-gambling groups are like, well, I mean, we can't have this. No. And then that also covers it up. So when they have a politician in their pocket, the anti-gambling groups is like, well, I'm just fighting for the integrity of the state here. Like it has nothing to do with anything else. It's like paid for by, Gambling is Bad USA. And you're like, well, where did they get that money? Oh, from Harris.
They want you to believe, and kids, if you're watching, the adults want you to believe that it's a really complicated world. But when you break it down and simply connect dots, you'll be amazed at how simple the world actually works. And you'll understand why things work the way they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a break. When we come back, it's time for some random NFL chatter.
Yes.
You and I have not talked NFL this year. We're going to talk NFL. This is 365 Sports.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina, Pierre Noujaim on your Thursday. And Pierre, we're not to the halfway point yet of the NFL season, but you get to cover a team that's been very interesting this year. I listen, as a Jameis Winston super fan, I kind of hope the same thing happens eventually to Jameis Winston that's happened to Sam Darnold. I see no reason why it couldn't, given the fact that Jameis Winston was far better at any point in his life than Sam Darnold's been. But Sam Darnold has gotten in this offense with Kevin O'Connell there in Minnesota. There, granted, you have Justin Jefferson. Things seem to happen well for you, but they've withstood some injuries. They've played some hard-fought games, and the Vikings are sitting here in what is a crazy NFC North where all 4 teams are playoff caliber realistically right now. So what are your thoughts on that? And then I will let you ask me questions about the Cowboys before we kind of go rapid fire.
Well, I mean, to be honest, with the way the division is playing out, and it's funny that you mentioned the NFC North because all 4 teams have at least 4 wins as of right now. And then this Sunday, we've got a monster showdown at US Bank Stadium because the Lions are in town. We got the Lions and the Vikings. Winner is going to be in first place in the NFC North. When it comes to the Vikings, it's funny because when you look at them, particularly offensively, they're not going to wow you. This is not a team that is, going to put up points in bunches. It's more of like a death by 1,000 cuts type offense. If you look at them, they're only ranked 17th in total offense. Sam Darnold has been very good. He didn't have a great game by his standard against the Jets last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say, before the bye. But right now, this team, as well as Sam Darnold is playing, this team is absolutely led by their defense. Absolutely led by their defense, Paul. The second against the run. What is it? 3rd or 4th in points against. Brian Flores, if he didn't have a pending lawsuit with the NFL right now, everybody would be talking about him as getting another head coaching job. And it's a matter of when, if, and not if, because when it comes to scheming up his defenses and putting guys in the right place at the right time, it's unbelievable how this guy just knows how to press the right buttons on any given day. And this team is 100% led by their defense. And in terms of how they're doing this with their offense being a middle of the road offense, they're much better at running the ball than they were last year. Alexander Mattison did not get the job done last year. Aaron Jones has been a breath of fresh air for this team. And they just play complementary football. That's what I've been saying for 6 weeks. We have our own Vikings Now podcast at Fox 9. And that's the word I just find myself week after week after week saying. It's complementary. The run game goes well. If they turn the ball over, guess what? Defense has to stand on a 4th down. Defense forces a turnover. Offense takes care of it, a short field situation, punches it into the end zone instead of settling for field goals. So that's really what it's been. It's been a very well-balanced complementary team.
And TJ Hawkins is not even back yet.
He's not, and he's limited in practice this week. I'm wondering if he'll get the green light for this week, and that would be poetic considering he got his knee torn to shreds against the Lions last year on Christmas Eve. So he is limited. He was limited as of yesterday. He'll probably be limited again today. What does that mean for his status this Sunday? Not really sure just yet, but he's eligible to come to get going here fairly soon.
And J.J. McCarthy, this was his team right off the bat, too. Like, that's what's really surprising that Sam Darnold was able to, he had beaten out Sam Darnold. And in his preseason action looked good, but then was hurt, and that was it. So here's the thing. Sam Darnold's going to go make more money somewhere else next year, and J.J. McCarthy's going to inherit this team, which also adds to an interesting dynamic for the future.
Yeah, and at training camp, I remember watching training camp with a close eye. And even though Sam Darnold, when he came here and signed here, he was told that he was the QB1 starting out. When training camp rolls around, he was going to be number 1 on the depth chart. When about a week and a half into training camp, I remember talking to some colleagues of mine, and I just watched it just by the naked eye. And I will fully admit that I wasn't a huge J.J. McCarthy believer in terms of his talent translating to the next level. However, during training camp, I turned over to some people and I said, I think this race for QB1 is a lot closer than the Vikings are indicating. Like if JJ McCarthy was fully healthy, I am not convinced that Sam Darnold would have been the quarterback in week 1. I'm not convinced of it because I think JJ McCarthy was playing that well during training camp. He was picking up the offense very well, and he's going to be the future. There's no doubt about it. But now it's an interesting conundrum of what they do now with Sam Darnold in terms of, well, do you let him walk for nothing? Do you sign him to maybe a big lucrative short-term deal and maybe because as we've seen, you're going to need 2 quarterbacks in a lot of situations. You're going to need 2 quarterbacks at some point or another in the season. So Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has a decision to make on Sam Darnold, but in terms of JJ McCarthy, yeah, he's going to absolutely be the future here going forward.
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy thing. I think they're just going to have to let him walk, and
I think so too. I think that's going to be the situation. Yeah,
and be the quarterback in Cleveland or somewhere that needs a bridge quarterback next Seattle, whatever is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen with Sam Darnold, and he's going to cash in again. So good for Sam. He waited his turn. He didn't get beaten up in the Jets and the Panthers, and also credit to Kyle Shanahan for maybe aiding in his development, and he matured and got better. So
yeah, absolutely, and he's played very well. I mean, interceptions were a big part of the problem of his career earlier on, and he's not turned the ball over. I believe he only has 4 on the year so far. So he's not turning the ball over. He's putting his team in a position to win. There have been some close calls. There's no doubt been some close calls in some of the games that have been almost interceptions. I'm still not convinced that he's fully made the full turnaround. That would be comfortable for me to give him the keys to the car in the offseason if I was shopping for a quarterback, but he's well on his way to proving it. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now I will let you ask me questions about the Cowboys.
Yes. Okay. So my first question is did just nobody foresee that running the ball was going to be an issue for this team? I'm saving the big question for last. But in terms of in the short term, running the football with this team, did nobody pay attention to what they were going to do on offense in terms of trying to run the football?
It's funny you mentioned that. All of us outside did.
Yes.
The Cowboys have this thing where they decide they don't have a reasonable calendar on their extensions. Deadlines make deals and all these things. So they also, I think, underestimated didn't nail what their needs were in the draft, like what the biggest needs were. Mm-hmm. And I thought they had to find, I'm not mad at the draft they had necessarily. I'm mad at the fact that they did not address running back when this was a good year for running backs. And a matter of fact, I think you're about to see a great year for running backs. And I think you're going to see a running back renaissance because teams know now that you can't run the ball. You can't do a lot of things. The Bills have been so much better since they incorporated James Cook into their offense a season ago. The Cowboys and Dak has always been better when they are purely balanced. They're all out of balance right now. And if you heard Troy Aikman today, he is just on the wide receivers like crazy for their terrible routes, including CeeDee Lamb and how lazy their route running is. And that goes back a little bit, and that's McCarthy, but if all the wide receivers are running bad routes, that is on them, yes, but that's also on the coaching staff that puts them in multiple people, even people I have no respect for, in the NFL analyst game will be well, this route tree is all messed up about the Cowboys. So that's bad enough as it is. And then you have a running game that's non-existent, and they get this whole thing of they love their undrafted free agents like Rico Dowdle, but and he's a good player to have on your team. He's a valuable backup, but he is nothing more than that. And they've had this over their history. I keep seeing if he does well enough this year, Jerry Jones will give him an extension and treat him like a guy named Troy Hambrick, who was there and had a good run. Nobody overestimates a good 3-4 game run like Jerry Jones. Miles Austin was a fine player for the Cowboys, but he had this game against the Chiefs once where he had 248 yards. Yeah. And they're well, that's it. Give him a 4-year extension. And then he had hamstring problems over and over and over again. So, sometimes you just have a good game. I think Jerry needs to play fantasy football. I really do. Just 1 year, play fantasy football and understand that, sometimes you hit a guy for 3 games and he's good and he helps you win the league, but you don't draft him the next year.
Yeah.
You just realize that, the 2 guys in front of him were out. He stepped in ably. The team around him was good, but they are going cheap on running back right now. They brought back Zeke. They keep reducing his workload. I would not be surprised to see Dalvin Cook after another loss or two, maybe even after the bye, like just to see, like they've got him on the practice squad, elevate him, see if he's ready to go. I don't know, but they don't know. Like this is repeating the cycle that they did with Tony Romo, where at the beginning of it was all great and everything was going well, but then they didn't have the team around him to where it wasn't like it was just Tony go save us, and now it's Dak go save us, and I don't know how they haven't seen that.
I don't know why they wouldn't elevate Dalvin Cook at this point, because in my mind, I'm like, well, how can it get any worse? In terms of, listen, I know that. So, Dalvin Cook's not going to be the savior of this run game or this offense. I fully understand that. But I remember in the offseason, Mike McCarthy was touting Mike Zimmer in terms of why wouldn't I go out and get a guy like him in terms of, being my defensive coordinator. And don't get me wrong, I'm not throwing shade at Mike Zimmer. I still think he's capable of piecing together a great defense. And of course, losing some of your star players on defense is not going to help your cause. That certainly has an effect. But when you get blown out on your home turf on more than one occasion over this last calendar year, something's not right. So something's not right to me. That should not happen in the NFL. The NFL has far too much talent in order, to see games result the way that they're resulting at Cowboys Stadium, the way that they have been in the last year. My other thing is, I might as well get to it right now because I know we're running out of time. I have never been. Jerry does this. He wants to have a public contract dispute with his stars. He did it with Zeke. He did it with Dak, and eventually he did
it with Emmett.
He did it with Emmett.
Smith.
Yeah, he did it with Emmett. You're right. Yeah, he loves to do this, and he eventually caves after a whole fake pomp and circumstance. But you paid the running back a few years ago. Didn't work out well. Dak Prescott, I understand the numbers with Dak Prescott. And last year, Dak was in the MVP conversation. I get it. It's the most important position in the world. But the eye test has to come into play at some point. It's like, okay, he's got a great offensive line around him. The offense is well balanced. The receivers are great. This is all working well for him. But is it a product of the system, or is it because this quarterback is this talented and this worthy of this type of money in the league? You have to have this hard conversation with yourself. And I felt the same as, me as a Miami Dolphins fan. I had the same conversation about Tua. And I think I was never a big believer in Dak Prescott being the guy and being a guy that is commands the type of top 10 money in the league. I understand that's what the position is worth, but I thought the contract to Dak Prescott was a mistake. I thought it was a mistake.
I don't. I think they kind of had to. I mean, because of the dead money. Like I think it's only a mistake if they don't follow it up with the salary cap room that they have is 26 to 28 million right now. They can clear about another 21 off the books with post June 1st cuts for free agency next year. But it's also about draft. Like, they have a bunch of draft picks this year. It's about making those count because they're still going to have salary cap issues because a lot of that money that they're going to clear off the books is going to go right away into number 11, Micah Parsons' pocket.
Right.
So they need to really hit it with a draft next year, and running back needs to be – I don't care if they draft one in the first round. I don't care if they wind up with the 7th pick and draft one. Yeah. Ashton Genty is out there, and he is the truth. Go get him. They love Boise State players. They've drafted a ton of Boise State players. This is the best one of them all. And no offense to my old podcast partner, Orlando Skandrick, who I promise you is not watching the show. But go get Ashton Genty. He's my... He is Cowboys are like, it's him or bust for me. Now there's other running backs I'd be fine with him taking, but if you want to help Dak, go get Ashton Genty. Go get another complimentary wide receiver to CeeDee Lamb, and don't be afraid to use these picks that you have, a lot of them, to make a trade for a player who can complement those guys. Like, do that. That's what you need to do.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised the Dolphins and the Cowboys haven't gotten on the phone with each other and made a deal for, because the Dolphins have a stable of running backs and the Dolphins are in need of another backup quarterback. And Trey Lance is just in there, even though I'm not a big believer of Trey Lance. However, he was with Mike McDaniel in San Francisco when they drafted him, so he knows what type of tools he could possess. And backup quarterback suddenly looks a little bit more important in Miami than other people were led to believe in the offseason. So, there's a stable of running backs in Miami that I think could help Dallas immediately. And then you give us Trey Lance, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Trey Lance for Raheem Mostert, straight up.
I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat. Even though I would argue that Raheem Mostert is the most important back in that backfield. People look what that offense was. He was out for 4 games. And suddenly, if they shift their identity, which they're going to need to do for at least another game, the outside zone scheme with Raheem Mostert, and the inside zone scheme, he's the difference. He's a big difference. People want to see the thunder and lightning with Achane and Jalen Wright. Do not forget about Raheem Mostert. Very important running back that I would hate to see go, but at the same time, too, I understand the position that this team is in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Pierre, I expect text from you this week on wedding planning and all that.
Oh yeah.
We'll talk. We'll work through it. By the way, before we go, and I only gave us 5 minutes to talk about this because I know the chat room probably hates it. But have you been watching Battle of the Eras?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm all the way caught up. Watched last night. It's a big monumental shift that's coming up here in the season. It's been good. It's been good. I've enjoyed it for sure.
Yeah. No, I can't wait to see how it goes. I'm like, are we rooting for? But who are we rooting for?
I was rooting for Era 1, as you probably were too, because these were our OG people, and now they have just been decimated. It's just down to Rachel. So I would love to see Rachel win the whole thing. That would be great. But yeah, at this point, we're rooting for a Bananas win again because he's my boy. I got to meet him a while back. So the one I've said this time and again, I'm going to say it again. I'm just fed up with Corey and Josh continuously getting callbacks for this show. The two of them are just such paper tigers and annoy me greatly to no end that I can't stand either of them.
You just verbalize why they're on.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I can. Yeah. I know. Yes. They're love and hate are two sides of the same coin. I fully understand that. I'm fully well aware.
Josh cries 100 times a season. It's ridiculous. He was the same way on Big Brother. It's too much. I would like him and Corey gone. I would love Laurel gone. No one likes her.
I would love to see another Laurel Cara dispute. I hope that rears its ugly head again. But at this point, I wanted Era 1 because at the time we thought it was just going to be a team competition show to the end, but that's clearly not going to be the case anymore, which I'm a little annoyed by, to be honest, in that sense. But all my Era 1 people are gone, so all I have left is Bananas at this point. 100%.
Yeah, and all of them wound up getting hurt in some way, which is why they just need to go to the Veterans Challenge, the
All-Star Challenge. Yes,
All-Star,
Derek tore his ACL.
Yeah,
he tore his ACL.
Yeah, they need to just play. Look, they got to go to the senior tour. It sucks, but that's how it is.
I would still watch. Still watch.
Go to the senior tour. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Pierre. We'll see you next week, buddy.
See you guys.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Coming up on The Big Show in just a few minutes, an hour to be exact. David Ubben of The Athletic, former Baylor quarterback Seth Russell is one of my favorite guests. Craig Smith's Off the Radar, the Big South Pod, which right now outside of tech is the pod. Like tech, great. That's going to be fun talking about tech. TCU, Oklahoma State, and Baylor, not so much. Ugh. Yeah, that's that's how their seasons are going. We're like, did I eat something? Like, what did I have? Did I go too hard at Golden Corral? Is that what's going on?
Damn Golden Corral.
Listen, the people watching at a Golden Corral is great. The food is not, but the people watching is glorious. I once at a Golden, my dad used to like to go there on Sunday mornings. He loved the Golden Corral. I think for this reason. But we were there, breakfast Sunday morning, and there was a couple sitting right near us, and they had piled their plates. You go as much as you want.
Oh, yeah.
But the plate was piled like this. And I'm like, it's not, all you can get in one haul. Like you can go back. Like, so have, like his eggs and pancakes and bacon and sausage and everything just stacked up. And I don't know how he was eating it without it like all falling off.
I know a lady that died in Golden Corral.
Really?
Straight up.
From like gorging herself?
Probably. I swear to God. I know.
That's the most Ogleby shit I've ever heard in my life.
She was from Valley Mills. Yes. It's all the same.
Oh man, I don't mean to laugh at her death. But
it's life.
But
we all know.
Yeah, it's coming for us all, and we don't know when. That's gonna do it for us. See you on. Well, we're gonna have a full show tomorrow, so I'll see you in an hour, and we'll see you tomorrow.